What is up, Ghoul fans? Simon here. Welcome to HannaTalk. Hope you're all doing absolutely fantastic. It's a bright and sunny day here in Melbourne, Australia. But as Neil Finn once said, 4 seasons in 1 day. And today I'm here with a very special guest. Now, he is an actor who is best known to fans as Uta from Tokyo Ghoul, but he's also starred across in series such as My Hero Academia, Fire Force, Fairy Tail, D Grey Man, One Piece, Dragon Ball, and many more. Please welcome Aaron Roberts.
Hello, everyone.
Hello, hello, how are you?
I'm doing all right, man. The world is crazy right now, and things are strange. My wife and I are still in quarantine. Only venturing out to get basic things, but I don't know. I don't know. I'm not sure where your political leanings are, but our government here in America is a complete disaster. It has really let us down. Things are really terrible, but it's okay. We're gonna make it through. Yeah, I don't know, man. I'm doing all right. How are you doing?
I'm very well, thank you. It's been kind of roughly somewhat similar to what's happening up there at the moment, but it's kind of the same for us. Kind of just stuck in isolation, same as everybody else, just going out to get basic things and just waiting for that time when they say, "All right, it's all over, you can come out now." So sort of thing. So it's definitely been like that for us. But during this difficult time with obviously what's happening with the pandemic, how have you been keeping things up, especially on the acting side of things?
It's really weird, man. Things have been not a lot has slowed down for me. It's kind of maintained a lot of the same pace because no one generally has a. I mean, with the exception of Funimation, because they shut down the studios and now we're all recording from home on a couple of selected. And I think at some point they're gonna kick everything up to full gear, but. Yeah, we've been recording on some selected properties and like My Hero and a couple other things that I don't think I can talk about. But yeah, we've been doing that stuff from home. Funimation has really stepped up and taken care of its voice actors in a lot of ways. But they sent us all, not all of them, they sent a lot of people home recording kits so that we could not Skype in, but we could do teleconferencing with the producers and with the directors with the ADR engineers, which we definitely need them to do our voice work. And we're recording our stuff at home in our home booths. And I'm really glad that I built mine 4 years ago and never thought about it again. But yeah, we did that. Yeah, and apart from that, I don't know. I booked a couple of voiceover gigs, and I booked an audiobook, and that's been I don't know. I've actually been staying pretty busy. I was pretty scared. The biggest, I guess, thing that collapsed or deflated was the con circuit, the convention circuit,
Mm,
and like that stuff. This was going to be a really big year for me, going to a lot of different places, almost Australia, but a lot of definitely in Europe and a couple other places. And I was really looking forward to meeting all of the fans and doing all that stuff and traveling. And things went crazy.
I that's definitely true about that, and that's absolutely fantastic that you've still been keeping the work up during that time, and that's fantastic that obviously with regards to the Comic Cons that Australia was one of the locations that you were planning to visit this year, which is amazing. Was it like a specific part of Australia? Was Melbourne going to be one of those locations?
I can't say. I mean, it's pretty. I think it would be pretty easy to deduce the conventions that are happening because there's a chain, a string of conventions that happen in Australia and also in New Zealand. But I can't like my appearances were never announced, and that's just yeah.
Right.
I can't talk about it.
That's okay. That's fantastic though. Now, let's start at the beginning of your acting career. How did you get started in acting?
I mean, I'm never to go back to my childhood days. I grew up as a Southern Baptist preacher's son and went to a lot of vacation Bible school. and they had music camps and things like that. And I remember I remember when I was 8 years old, I was in a play for the very first time, and I went to my mom and I said, "Hey, I think I know what I want to be when I grow up. I want to be an actor." And she said, "You probably want to think of something else because it's going to force you to compromise your morals." And I said, "Okay, I'll think of something else." And she was right, but not in the way she suspected. Um, yeah, so I don't know. I didn't do any acting for a long time outside of church. And then when I got to high school, I remember seeing a show, a high school play, and I was like, man, I'd really love to do this. I feel like, I don't know, because I was always acting up and like acting out and doing voices and characters and stuff for my friends, and sometimes to the point of annoyance. But I saw a play and I was like, man, I really love to do this. And I didn't ask permission of my parents, and I auditioned for this show and got in. And just everything kind of snowballed from there. And, like, I was in high school, which I don't know if you all refer to as secondary school or what your system is like down there. But
No, it's secondary
I
school.
ended up.
No,
Go on.
it's definitely secondary school up there. So I think we refer to kind of as both high school and secondary school. So at least to me, that's how I see
Okay,
it as.
great.
But sorry, continue with your story.
No, sure. Yeah, so I auditioned for a bunch of theater programs. I mean, I was on my way to becoming a computer programmer because I loved video games and I loved at the time. This is how old I am. I loved Warcraft, which is before World of Warcraft, and I wanted to go work for Blizzard. And I was on path to. I was on a early graduation path through Georgia Tech to like graduate in 3 years, and I wanted to go develop video games. But I thought, man, like I don't want to sit in front of my computer for the rest of my life doing things. I'd rather take a risk because I can always because code is code, and you can relearn how to code and all that stuff. Like if I want to do this, I can do it later. I'd rather while I have this opportunity, I'd like to learn how to. I'd like to take a risk and throw my life at a chance of acting for a living. And so I did. And ironically enough, now that I'm old, now that I'm a full-time actor, I spend a ridiculous amount of time in front of a computer. But I did get I auditioned for a bunch of schools here in North America, and I got a full scholarship to a really great program in Dallas, Texas, at Southern Methodist University. Is to slow that down to make sure everyone can hear it. Southern Methodist University. But yeah, I got a scholarship, and I live here now. I left for a little bit, but I came back because this place just feels like home to me. But anyway, yeah, that's yeah, man. I got training there, and I started doing professional shows here in Dallas. Yeah, things just kind of snowballed. There wasn't always fast. Some parts there were dark times when I never thought I was going to act again when I was working construction to pay off student loans. Or times like now when we're in the middle of a global crisis.
Right, fantastic. And obviously talking about just a little bit more, we've mentioned about, of course, with being having started doing production in video games before you started going into the world of acting, obviously just obviously kind of jumping ahead a little bit here, but because of the success of the last few video game films we've had, from Detective Pikachu to recently Sonic the Hedgehog, having broken the video game film curse, is there one video game project or franchise that you want to see adapted for live action?
Oh man, maybe specifically. I mean, Metal Gear. Yes, Metal Gear is awesome, but maybe specifically. And I'm speaking out of ignorance because I feel like if Metal Gear Solid had a movie adaptation, then it flew over my head and I didn't see it. But I loved Metal Gear Solid. I would just like anything. I would like to see that franchise turned into some sort of cinematic series for sure.
Fantastic. That would be fantastic if that would happen. I think I've spoken with a couple of the actors that have played in the Metal Gear Solid series, like Doug Stone, and I think even David Kay, I believe, as well. And I think they have mentioned about before wanting to see a Metal Gear live action film and series, which I think would be fantastic. That would be epic if they did something like that. And so going back,
Yeah, it'd be great.
yeah,
Uh,
absolutely, that would be fantastic. So going back onto with regards to acting, who do you consider to be your influences?
oh man, I would say I'll say first and foremost Gary Oldman. Because Gary Oldman once said this in an interview, is that he said that he said he's people are always complimenting him on his ability to work with accents, and he said he was like, I'm not really great at accents. I just work really hard. But you can't really see that. You don't see the work when you see him perform, and he's a chameleon, man. He can do just about anything he wants. And if he's a little shorter guy, but if you put him on an apple box, he'll be okay. You can have him go toe to toe with anybody. But yeah, I would say Gary Oldman for sure. In terms of I don't know, like in terms of voice actors, probably I don't know, Kevin Conroy. I mean, I used to
Mm,
run home from school, to watch Batman the animated series, and I just remember like being super influenced by that. And I was also, I mean, I didn't find out, I don't think, until like 2 or 3 seasons in, I already didn't realize that Mark Hamill was the voice of the Joker during that. But man, Batman the animated series was like the first, because I was coming into adolescence just as like that series came out. And I was like, oh man, like this is darker. Like this is a cartoon that isn't just for kids. And it made a huge impression on me. I don't know, man. Jeff Bridges, maybe. There's yeah, a lot. There's too many to name. I really respect people that are able to. I mean, I like. I don't know. You know what? I'll say this because a lot of people would try to pigeonhole Bruce Willis as someone who's an action hero, or some sort of gun cocking BA,
hmm
which he is. But he's also done in like Death Becomes Her, and I remember there was a series on television that he was on, where like basically it was before he even did Die Hard. Everyone questioned. They're like, he seems like too much of a loose cannon or someone who's more comedically inclined. Can he even, like, whenever they announced that he was going to be the action star in Die Hard, everyone had these doubts about whether or not he was going to be able to play this hard-nosed cop,
mm.
and they were wrong. And now that he did that, I mean, he struggled to make choices or make deliberate choices to force that perspective, that lens on his career. Yeah, man. I respect all those people. But like I said, the list is too long. I don't want anyone to feel left out, whoever's listening.
No, but that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. That actually reminds me of a story that I had with where I interviewed Brian Beacock yesterday actually, and he mentioned about his influences that it's like he doesn't necessarily list down actors as his influences, but to him he sees like a film or a television, a really well written film, a really well written TV that's got great screenplay, great acting, is what gives him that buzz to go out into acting. So. That's
Yeah.
kind of how I see it, which is fantastic. And it's funny that you mentioned about, of course, with Mark Hamill in Batman the Animated Series, because I remember, and especially for a series that was considered a kids show, because of what they did in the 90s, which really pushed like Batman into the very dark territory that he was going forth in the comics from around the 70s and the 80s, where they really pushed into those real dark influences of the character. But Mark Hamill actually said that I think it was when they released Batman the Killing Joke for the animated feature, he said on the animated series in the 90s, there were a lot of things they were just not allowed to do because of the fact that it was viewed by kids. So they would have pushed into much darker territory had Batman the Animated Series not been done as a kids show. So, yeah,
Wow.
it's
That,
absolutely fantastic. Which obviously, again, jumping ahead just a little bit here, but obviously because of what's happening with Marvel and DC at the moment, because of like Marvel getting the X-Men characters and the Fantastic Four into the MCU, and of course we have Robert Pattinson coming forth as Batman. Are there any particular like Marvel or DC characters that you want to see brought into the live action universe?
Oh man. Crap. That's a. Sorry, this feels a little bit like a pop quiz. But I will do my best. Man, I was. I mean, I don't. I was disappointed to. I was disappointed that the Riddler didn't quite make it into Christopher Nolan's Batman. Um, or at least there was that guy whose name was his last name was Reese, and so he
Mm.
was Mr. Reese, Mr. Reese. So he kind of looked like Frank Gorshin a little bit, and he was working for Wayne Enterprises, and he was the one that came to the desk and was talking to came to oh man
It's
Morgan Freeman's office,
right.
Fox,
Mm.
Lucius Fox,
Lucius Fox, yes.
his office, and was threatening to bring all this stuff to light. And then he leans forward, like, and I remember him leaning forward and be like, "So, Mr. Reese," and I was like, "Oh, what, Mr. Reese? What happened here?" So that felt like a little bit of an Easter egg, but yeah, I don't know. That would be nice. Man, there's a bunch of oh man, there's too many to name. I'd like to see. Apparently, Lobo is in the new Krypton series,
Yes.
which I think is interesting. I never thought I haven't watched any of the series. That didn't seem like a very viable choice for me,
Mm.
and maybe it works. But I always thought that Lobo could be his own movie series. I don't know. I think there's some characters in the Marvel and DC universes that lend themselves to the like a cinematic existence, and some that lend themselves to a serialized existence. I don't know, and man, I hope that anyone who would ever cast me in a Marvel movie never hears this interview. But I don't know that the Fantastic Four makes a great. I don't know that they should live in cinema. I would love to watch, because the Fantastic Four is a scientific team, and I would love for them to solve a different mystery every week on television. And with what they're doing
Wow.
on the CW now with the Flash and with Supergirl and Arrow and all that, and like in the special effects that they have, in their bag of tricks, it seems like they could 100% produce, especially with Marvel's studio clout,
Mm.
they could 100% produce a series that has a high level of special effects where you could have the Fantastic Four go on indefinitely doing whatever. But I don't know. Um, there's a whole other deeper conversation to have here about the idea of DC movies not succeeding because of the era that in terms of like teamwork,
Mm.
um, because of the era that they were born out of.
Mm.
Because it's such like DC heroes and villains are born out of this individualistic notion of American society, and born out of a slightly different like post World War II and some pre World War II era stuff where it was a much like pull yourself up by the bootstraps. You're here on your own 2 feet. Like this is like you're alone and you've got to get the job done. And then by the time we get to the 60s and 70s, and Marvel is reaching their heyday, there's this notion and this idea that like it is absolutely imperative that we work together, and if we don't work, like it seems imperative and necessary, and if we don't, think the whole world is going to be doomed.
Mm.
And so it seems to me that in the cinematic universe, things for the Marvel universe are so much easier to put together, because they seem to, in the source material, need each other so much more.
Mm.
But yeah, and DC has done a great job of tying different worlds together and like crossovers and things. But yeah, it's an interesting system of values. I'm rabbit trailing hard. But yeah,
No, that's fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And it's definitely true what you said about with that's interesting about what you said about with the whole cinematic universe versus the serialized part of it. Talking about, of course, with the Fantastic Four, because it's interesting because I do remember, because I know for a fact that Marvel had last year, I think, officially gotten the rights back to the X-Men and the Fantastic Four. And Kevin Feige, as per his words, when he got asked about them, He said, "I'm so excited to bring Marvel's first family up to the justice and respect that they deserve." So kind of implying a little bit that they are going to be doing a full-on film with these characters, because it's, well, obviously taking a huge shot at the other Fantastic Four characters, but but in terms of I think in terms of DC characters, it's interesting that you said about, of course, some lend to cinematic universes versus serialized stuff. Because I do remember they originally planned to do, I think, a Lobo movie before. I think they ended up scrapping the plans for that, going like, you know what, because of what happened with Justice League, let's just take it one film at a time, sort of thing. So that's kind of been
Ugh.
so that's pretty interesting in that fact. I think in terms of the types of characters, I think I think personally for me, from as a Marvel DC fan myself, I think definitely push into characters that I think that they haven't done before on screen, and I think characters that I feel like just haven't been given the justice and respect that they deserve. Like Justice League Dark is one that comes to my mind, and which they're turning into a live action TV series, and them officially doing a live action Green Lantern TV series. So it's
Okay.
so they're pushing into such crazy territory, and that's interesting about how you mentioned about the differences between, like, with Marvel and DC there. Which, to any listeners out there wondering if you want to know about the difference between Marvel and DC, that's just have a listen to this interview because that'll explain it all for you right there. But that's fantastic. And going back onto your voiceover work, like across your entire career, have you ever turned down a role for any particular reason?
I've only turned down work where there was a show that was oh man, there was a show that had, like, I went for research. I was watching. I got asked to audition for the show, so I hadn't won anything. I don't think I've ever booked a role that I was like no, or like someone offered me. I mean, I've been offered like some like roles in TV and film where like for whatever reason it seemed like a bad idea and I didn't do it. But in terms of voiceover work, I've had audition opportunities for shows where I went back to watch I went back to research the show and to watch some of the episodes to figure out what the show was about and figure out what world the character lives in. And I just saw like some horribly racist, xenophobic, and then other times like really crass, homophobic jokes and
Mm,
like things that weren't funny. Things that were really like there's, I don't know, there's ways to be funny and to include everyone, and this definitely seemed like exclusionary humor, and I was just like I sent my agent an email. I was like, I don't want to be a part of this. Like this is really offensive, and I don't want this to be a part of who I am and what the work I do.
right, fantastic. Now, as many fans will know, speaking about, of course, with source material, is that anime, like majority of a lot of anime shows are based on manga. Have you ever read the manga for any anime series that you've worked on, or become familiar or heard of a project before you started working on that series?
Yes. Man, when I heard that, I've read a bunch of My Hero for sure. But whenever I heard that, because I'm a big Soul Eater fan, and whenever I heard that Funimation was getting the rights to dub Fire Force, I even like in the first, like I saw the first image, like the trailer images of like from the first episode. And I'm a huge fan of the animation and the storytelling in Soul Eater, and I absolutely knew that I needed to be a part of this project in some way or another. And so I started like an idiot, started to obsess over Fire Force and bought like the first 24 manga, and started reading through them. And I thought that I think it's one of the few. I've read through some of the other. Oh God, sorry. Let me stop dancing around. But yes, Fire Force is something that I have absolutely read through. I'm super familiar with it. I had myself in mind for a couple different parts. Tokyo Ghoul because I found out that I was going to be, well, for Fire Force, I found out who I was going to be voicing a few weeks before I started recording. And I had not made my way that far into the manga, although I had purchased it. But I told when the director told me, when Kyle Phillips told me in the lobby of Funimation that I was going to be playing this character, I told him to shut up and stop playing with my feelings when he told me that I was going to be voicing Benimaru. But yeah, there was, I guess, another show that I've read manga for specifically is Tokyo Ghoul, because I knew I had already gotten word down the pipeline that they were going to be compressing a lot of the storyline into a very tight narrative for the last 3 or 4 or 5 seasons. I wasn't sure how many more seasons we were going to get, and so I started reading through the manga, and so I could track what was happening with Uta, because I wasn't sure I was going to get the expository the explanation or the time to explore that in the booth with the character while recording. I just wasn't sure. I wasn't sure what I was going to be learning in the booth about my character's journey, and decided to go ahead and read ahead in the manga so that I like the times that Uta is telling his story and that I'm there to tell the story, that I know I have a background and I have context
Right.
to express that. So those are probably the two biggest. I've read a couple of other shows. I mean, a lot of times you don't know what you're going to be recording when you go in, but yeah, those are for the most recent work that I've done. Those are the biggest chunks of manga that I've read for research.
Wow. That's absolutely fantastic. So you kind of walked into like this series, obviously having read a lot of the manga at this point, because mostly a lot of voice actors don't ever read the manga for any anime series that they've worked on, but they hear about stories from fans that they said, oh, we want to see like you go through this particular story arc, or we want to see this particular story arc adapted for the anime series. But that's fantastic that you walked into it having an idea for what like the scope for what the series is, just reading ahead like that. But with any of the shows that you've had, like especially with a prominent character featured across the series, was did you like when you walked into recording your lines for certain scenes, were they like also were they like still recorded out of context, and you went in like going, all right, okay, what part of the series are we up to with this one in the manga? Where is this coming from?
Usually the director, usually the director is pretty good about describing what the world is, and of course, like every time, I mean, I've had the opportunity to audition for almost anything that comes through Funimation, and I usually get character breakdowns and show breakdowns for what's happening. So I keep up in that way. And then I also, because I'm curious about my colleagues' work, and I'm curious about what's happening in terms of what's being produced and even what's popular, if that matters. And so I will, I will watch. God, what is the question?
Even having read the manga for like the last couple of series they worked on, which was My Hero Academia, My Hero Academia, Fire Force, and Tokyo Ghoul, which you've talked a fair bit about. When you went into recording scenes for any series where your character was quite prominent, especially if it's a series that you've read the manga for, were they still this? I imagine the scenes were still recorded out of context, and you're going like, all right, what story arc are we up to in this one? So still having the manga as
Yes.
context.
Well, cool. Yes, good. I'm with
Mm,
you. Yeah, but for the most part, the directors are really great about providing context and letting us know what's happening and where our particular character is on their journey and how that relates to the whole of the story. I mean, I 100%. I read the cliff notes obsessively on My Hero Academia, just because I want to know if Convoy Woods is coming back, and he is. But I don't know. There's like some things I will bump in and I'll check the clip notes, and then like when I go in, the director does their part to let me know like what's happening and where we are, and I will affirm. I will affirm them and confirm that I am up to date on the things, or that I am watching the show and I'm up to date, or whatever. And then they will fill me in whatever way. Yeah. Which is really interesting because like the more, I mean, the more informed I think at one point in time in my voice acting career, the more knowledge I had, the more detrimental it was, because I still didn't have a grasp of like the overall whatever. But now, like, feel like the more informed I am and the more collaborative I can be with the director, it really is creating a lot of special, refined, unique work, and it's more exciting now. But
Fantastic.
but yeah, most things have context. By the time I'm recording, and most things are, yeah, I feel like I know what's going on.
Right, fantastic. Well, that because I remember this one interview that I did with Joshua Seth, where I think it was with Joshua Seth, I think it was with Spike Spencer, where they spoke about how no, I believe it was with Joshua Seth, yes, where the one bit of advice that he got from an actor, where the actor said to him, "Don't read ahead." Especially if you're working on a very like big franchise or a very popular franchise, don't read ahead because he said that I think he said that he wants to be surprised whenever he's going into a project, like if especially if it's working on a very specific character. So
Yeah, there are some. I mean, and there are some directors that would prefer that you not read ahead. There are some directors that I work with that don't want us to know, which I think is I don't know is interesting, because whenever I do a stage play as an actor, you read the whole play, like you know the end, like you've got to perform it, and your job is to get up on stage and make sure that it looks like you know what you're doing, but you've never done this before. So if that's your job, I just don't understand. Sometimes I don't understand why. There are shows where I like to be surprised,
mm,
and I don't want to know where it's going. And of course, I mean, but there's also layers. I mean, I feel like Fire Force was a show that I needed, uh, because of my knowledge of the show and because of my knowledge of Benimaru. I was able to layer a lot of performance choices into that guy that could have otherwise been flat had I not landed or played flat had I not investigated and done the work, on my own, apart from the collaborative process that happens in the booth. Because there was so much, because the guy's a superhero or he has superpowers, but he's not completely invulnerable. And so I don't know. I thought that the most interesting choice that I could make or one of the most interesting choices I make would be that he has suffered from smoke inhalation, and that's because I read the manga, and you didn't like I never saw my character inhale smoke until we got to a flashback. Um,
right.
but anyway, but I don't know. There are some actors that work better that way. There are some actors that need to know everything. Your training and your process is kind of a buffet. You have to take what works for you and leave the rest behind. A lot of times on a larger budget, big studio thing like project, you don't get to see the whole script. You're
Mm,
just gonna have to be your own director and read the script and analyze it and figure it out.
right.
Because you're never going to see all the pages. I will speak as vaguely as I can, but I just recently auditioned for a movie that is about one of our former presidents, and I'm never going to see the whole script. Like
Wow.
I'm going to see my 3 pages, and that's all I've got. Um, Unfortunately, it's a historical docudrama, so I've got a lot of resources to pull from. Um, but you've got to, I don't know, you've got to figure it out. It's a collaborative process. You've got to trust your producers and trust your director and all, and trust your research.
Right.
Um, yeah,
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful about that. And that's interesting, and that's really funny about how you mentioned about, of course, with My Hero Academia being like very much like a superhero type of series, which to me I definitely picked up on that from seeing the clips about the series, in that it's very much equivalent to like something that Marvel or DC would do in that fact, which is just fantastic. And actually, following back onto what you were talking about with with the Riddler in the Batman movies, because Paul Dano is actually been cast as the Riddler in Matt Reeves' Batman movie with Robert Pattinson. So we're officially going to be seeing the Riddler in his new Batman trilogy. So to any Batman fans out there, that's one of the biggest news right there.
Yeah, man. I would love to see that. I was even excited to see what people did in the Fox series Gotham. I thought everyone had a really interesting take on the villains and the heroes there. But I'm really excited to see this. To see this new Batman. I hope they get to finish filming it. um, but yeah, the cast looks amazing.
Fantastic, absolutely. Now, obviously talking about obviously mentioning about, of course, like some of your most prominent roles here. But what was like your first voiceover role?
You talking in terms of a character that I played, or like the first commercial role that I booked?
Um, first, I'd say like first commercial role you booked. Yes.
The first commercial, like before I ever did a voice at Funimation, I do you allow cursing on this show?
Yes, yes, yes. Please go right ahead. Speak freely.
Great. So before I ever did a voice for Funimation, before I had no, I was saying, before I even had an agent, and I think I'd been working for Funimation for 2 years, but I didn't. I was doing like I don't know. I think I was only doing background stuff, and then like their production schedule was so slow that that didn't hurt my feelings at all because there wasn't a whole lot happening. But like the first big thing that I did was that I booked there's a fried chicken company here in the United States called Raising Cane's. And I did a commercial where I did basically an imitation of Don King, who is a boxing promoter. I don't know that this could happen now because Don King is an African American, and I'm a white man, white American male. And there's a thing in the industry called racial appropriation, and this apparently had somehow slipped through the cracks. I originally I didn't even audition for the role. He's a big bombastic boxing promoter. To let you know who Don King is, he has kind of poofy spiked hair. He's an older black gentleman, and he is kind of gruff and rough and a little bit sinister. He's definitely got he's part of the seedy world of boxing. But I auditioned for this commercial for Raising Cane's. Before I ever had an agent, and I went in and I booked the boxing announcer. It was like, oh, there he is now, Jim. Blah blah blah. And so I recorded my stuff, and I got done. And the guy that they had hired, who was an African American male, went in to record for Don King, and he was struggling and wasn't working it out. And while I'm in there, I'm sitting in the control booth as this other actor is struggling, and this producer looked at me and he said, "You auditioned for this role." I was like, "Yeah, no, I can't do it." But he needs to sound rougher, right? He needs to sound gruffer. And Don King has this famous line that he gave, and it was he was coming out of a bathroom, and somebody saw him not wash his hands after he went to the bathroom, and they said, "Mr. King, are you not going to wash your hands?" And Don King said, "I wash my hands before I touch my dick." So I threw that line out. I had already recorded my stuff, and I was getting paid. But I threw that line out, and the producer's like, "Would you like to give it a shot?" And I was like, "Sure." And so I went in and recorded this crazy voiceover of "This June the lids are coming off. It's Raising Cane's Dusty Throwdown," which was just a battle between fresh squeezed lemonade and freshly brewed iced tea. Yeah. So that was the first big wildest thing that I ever did. That should never have happened.
Wow.
Anyway, but Anyway, the first big thing that I did for Funimation, or in terms of character voice acting, was Sunny in Toriko Gourmet Hunter.
Right.
Which is that was my first named role, and it was my first supporting lead role. And I think I got it after I had been up doing work at Funimation for a year and a half. Which is great. That's a great show too. They're from the same studio that brought you One Piece and Dragon Ball. And there's several crossover movies between One Piece, Dragon Ball, and Toriko. And several of the Toriko characters are in, I think it's called J All Stars, which is a fighting video game.
I believe so, yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So that's absolutely fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Now, because there have been like several crossovers between like Dragon Ball and One Piece and Toriko, as you mentioned about before, and that's something I think a lot of fans have been wanting to see for a very long time, especially like a crossover with the Dragon Ball universe and the One Piece universe, which would be absolutely epic. So that's absolutely
Oh, what would I
fantastic.
like to see? Are you asking me what I would like to see a crossover of?
Oh no no no! Because you mentioned about, of course, with the crossovers with obviously with Dragon Ball, One Piece, and Toriko, and those are three shows that you've
Yeah.
worked on, and they've already kind of done crossovers with with kind of all three of those shows in the one video game, really. So that's just absolutely fantastic. So
Yeah, there was a possibility at one point in time, based on storylines and some other crossover movie. There was a point in time where I could have possibly been. I think it was a One Piece character and Sunny. I could have been fighting myself in one of those crossover movies,
well,
based on how the auditions landed. But yeah.
wow. Well, fingers crossed that the English dub for those crossovers end up making the light of day, because that would be fantastic. That would be absolutely fantastic.
They might one day. Who knows?
Absolutely, absolutely. Now, going across into some of your most prominent roles. Now, we've talked a fair bit about this, but obviously you mentioned about talking about Uta from Tokyo Ghoul, My Hero Academia as Kami. I apologize if I mispronounced this name. Kami of the Woods, and Fire Force as Benimaru. What was it like working across those series?
It's daunting for sure, because you never know. I mean, those are huge properties,
Mm.
and so you never want to destroy someone else's fandom. I think Austin Tyndall, who's the voice of Kaneki in Tokyo Ghoul and a bunch of other properties, he's in a bunch of other things, but I think he's played the lead protagonist in maybe 3 dozen properties. But he once said, it's better to not be cast than to be cast and ruin someone's favorite character,
Wow.
which I think is very, very wise. But yeah, it's daunting, man. Like, and particularly because I feel like by the time I got to, I don't know, man. By the time I got to Fire Force, because I loved that character coming into it, and I wanted to make sure. I don't know. I'm willing to give. I want to do that character justice. I feel like that's. I don't know. So it's daunting, and like at the end of the day, because you can't, like, as an actor, you have to find a balance of being satisfied with your work, and then also, I mean, you should always be, I feel like, pushing yourself and being somewhat unsatisfied.
Mm.
But there is like, there are times, there'll be times when I'm pushing the directors, like, we need to get another take, and the director's like, no, dude, you sound great. I was like, okay, well, that's okay. Let's listen to the playback, and then I'll listen to the playback, and I'm like, well, I'll be damned. That looks amazing. This is great. I would watch this. So I don't know. That's I don't know, the biggest, because I don't know, man. I'm a fan. I'm an actor, but I'm a fan. And
Fantastic.
I don't want to give anything less than my best to create the best, the most amazing experience for the viewer. And every time I go into the booth, like, all I want to do is create the best anime dubs of all time. And also, I mean, like, the way that I view it. Sorry, I'm totally springboarding here. But the way that I view it is like, it's like any. There's some people that say that we're just the X version of whatever, alternate version of audio on the DVD. And I don't view it that way at all. Like, there are people that have worked very hard to develop these characters, and manga artists that have been building these characters for years. and then finally like put them on paper, brought them to life in that way. And to me, all of these characters are just like any character from Shakespeare. They don't belong to anybody, and so I'm there to embody that character for in time that I am there in that booth, to provide the most honest, truthful, or fantastical performance that I can provide.
Mm.
But that character doesn't belong to me, but it doesn't make it any less awesome that I'm playing the part.
Fantastic.
It's just like Batman.
Absolutely. That's absolutely
A bunch of
fantastic.
doesn't make it any less awesome.
Absolutely. That's very interesting about how you mentioned about with Shakespeare, because there was an interview that Todd Phillips did when he was working on the Joker movie with Joaquin Phoenix, where he described comic books as like obviously he felt quite obviously talking about like having to do a film on one of the most popular Batman villains in history, and he said, I look at it as like comic books as the American Shakespeare, as like the American Shakespeare. There's more than one version of Hamlet. There's more than one version of Romeo and Juliet. There's always going to be more than one version of Batman and the Joker. And I'm just putting my own interpretation into that.
Yeah, I think that's perfect.
That's absolutely it right
Oh
there.
man, I mean, I could go full nerd drive with you for days. But I'm saying like because I feel like I had this other conversation. There's another local Dallas actor who's also a huge comic book fan, that I get into these weird philosophical conversations with. But the idea that Batman continues to evolve, and then every time that happens, the Joker has to evolve and step his game, and there's just like a constant evolution of both of those characters in relation to each other, which is just, I mean, that's, I feel like an innate truth in human existence is that whenever we change in relation to each other.
Mm,
So that makes total sense to me. Anyway,
absolutely. No, this is fantastic. This is absolutely wonderful. This is fantastic. And speaking about, of course, with obviously we're talking about the Joker. There was an interview that I did with Richard Epcar, where he had played the Joker for the Injustice games, and he said to me when we were talking about the different versions of the Joker, going from Mark Hamill to Jack Nicholson to Cesar Romero, and I think even before Jared Leto was cast in the role, he said to me that I have not even listened to Mark Hamill's version of the Joker, and I don't want to, because I don't want to end up copying his version of the Joker. I want to do my own version of it.
good.
Mm.
Good. That's very smart.
That,
That's very smart. Yeah, I would never. You know what? You asked me like what roles I turned down. I would turn down playing the Joker because there's just no way. I mean, if I accepted the role, I would have to move into a cabin in the mountains and be isolated for 6 weeks. And I don't know what I would do there, but I would need to lose my mind and reinvent my brain in order to come back and do better than Mark Hamill did.
That's
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. That'd be the way to go. That would probably be the way to go for something for a role like that. But to me, I wouldn't see it as like as better than Mark Hamill. I would see it as completely different in that way. It all goes back to that quote that Todd Phillips once said. It's like there's more than one version of Hamlet. There's more than one version of Romeo and Juliet. More than one version of Batman and the Joker. It's just a matter of interpretation, really. And like it's just a matter of personal perspective really and personal preference.
Yes, I mean I am absolutely with you. I'm just saying that the voice of Joker is my personal kryptonite. That I could I could never. I would be so afraid. I thought Troy Baker was also really great. I don't know. Yeah, there's been
Mm.
a lot of great people that have done the voice. But yeah, I would be terrified.
Absolutely, but that would be amazing if you got the role though. That would be fantastic. Now, speaking about, of course, with My Hero Academia, there are reports going about of fans wanting a spin-off on the series called My Villains Academia, focusing on the villains. What are your thoughts on that?
Is this a manga?
I'm not sure if this is supposed to be for the manga, or I think it's possibly for the manga, or I think this is them wanting to do an anime series on My Hero Academia, but focusing on the villain side of things.
don't know that. I mean, that's I don't know. That's totally up to the. I think it would be super interesting for sure. I love anti-heroes. I feel like, I mean, Hero Killer Stain is one of my favorite characters from My Hero. So, and I feel like he's a true anti-hero. He's doing what he's doing the wrong quote quote wrong thing, but he's doing what he thinks is best for the greater good. And I think that'd be super interesting. I'm also like, I'm pretty sure that this Vigilante series is probably going to get an anime series of its own, which is crazy exciting. But yeah, I'd be into that.
Absolutely, because I feel like if we're making like a lot of DC Marvel comparisons to this, I don't think there really has been that many like, especially shows focusing on superheroes, where they've had a show just dedicated entirely to the villains in that perspective. I mean, with the exception, I think just recently, until they did the Joker movie, they did. I think they're doing the Loki TV series with Tom Hiddleston, and they're doing the Black Adam movie with Dwayne Johnson as a spin-off from the Shazam character. So they're definitely pushing into more villain kind of properties, like having the villains kind of focused as the main focus of their own story in a way, as opposed to doing it just all about the heroes in that perspective. And I think that would be really exciting if they went into like, all right, let's do a show or a film about the villains and like the heroes as the background character.
Is that Black Adam news with The Rock for real? Is that a real thing?
Yes, that's it. That's absolutely real news.
Oh man, I'd not heard that. How did I miss that? Well, I guess we're in a global pandemic, but that's amazing.
It's actually it's actually been news that's been going about for the last I think for the last couple of years. I think even before they started working on the Shazam movie, and Black Adam has been talking. Sorry, excuse me. The Rock has been talking a lot about Black Adam for a very long time, and said, "I'm super excited to do this character. I'm a huge comic book fan. I'm a huge fan of the Black Adam character, and I just want to do the absolute justice and respect to this character, and I can't wait to fight off against Zachary Levi in the live action movies."
That's awesome.
Yeah,
I love Shazam too. That was really great. I had a good time.
Absolutely, that's fantastic. Now, speaking about, of course, with a lot of the other anime work that you've done, you've obviously mentioned about like with Dragon Ball and One Piece, but you've also played across in shows such as D Gray Man, Evangelion, High School DxD, and also Fruits Basket, the reboot of the original anime series. What was it like working across those series?
I had to go back. I had a heads up that I was going to be playing Howard Link in D Gray Man, but we recorded Hallow first, and then we went back and recorded the other 103 or 104 episodes. Of course, like Howard Link doesn't come into like episode 88, I think maybe, in the original series. But dude, yeah, I was given a heads up because there was just too much to explain. No, and this particular director, he doesn't usually let me know what's happening before I come in to record because he's one of the people who wants me to be fresh-minded and surprised when I record. But even he was like, no, you need to go back and watch D Gray Man to understand what's happening. This is a very, very long and intense story. And so, I came in. Yeah, I did. I watched. I didn't read any manga, but pardon me. But I read. I watched. All of the 103, 104 episodes before I came in to record for my stuff. So yeah, which sped things up for sure because she's like, oh, good, I don't have to explain any of this to you. High School DxD. I don't feel like I wasn't that crucial of a player to be that informed about it. I feel like I could, like, I don't know, that's yeah. I mean, I watched the first half of the first season, I think, and I was like, oh, okay, I know what's going on with this show. Cool, this is great. And then with One Piece, that show is so I don't believe in my lifetime that I will ever have the time to watch all of the episodes of One Piece. I don't know that I'll even ever have the time to be a part, like to watch all the episodes of Fairy Tail. It's a huge commitment, and I rely every time I go in to record for One Piece. I rely on wiki articles and the direction of the director to figure out what's happening.
Right.
Yeah, and what was the last property that you managed, that you mentioned?
There was Evangelion 3.0, which was part of the reboot series from the original Evangelion series, and Fruits Basket, which is the reboot to the original Fruits Basket anime series.
I went back and I watched the first two because I didn't have a whole lot of experience. I grew up in a super religious household, I think, as I mentioned, so I didn't have a lot of exposure to anime, and I wasn't allowed to watch it. But as much as, I mean, I'm an actor, so I researched, and so as much as I could, I went back and I watched the first two movies of the Evangelion movie series to get ready for the third. And a lot of it is like super abstract, super abstract, and it didn't necessarily help with my character formation. I mean, also like in that, like, if Evangelion, if that series of movies was Star Trek, like, I'm definitely like Edie Kitama is a total red shirt. I'm going to be the first person to die. When things go apart. So I mean, I don't know. I knew that my job was basically to, like, call out that we've got a fire on the port side bow, or whatever, or we're losing fluid, or whatever. Oh man. Oh, and dude, Fruits Basket. Fruits Basket is one of those things where I never thought, because if I was to watch all the anime that I am involved in, I would die, because I would never go outside and I wouldn't make money, or be able to provide for my family. So I'm pretty discerning when it comes to the things that I spend time watching. But Fruits Basket, it was like something that I never thought, like, I just never thought that, I thought it was gone. I thought it was gone forever. And I was like, oh, this is a beloved series. I will never have an opportunity to be a part of it. So I will probably not watch it. And life will go on. And then you get called into the studio, and I was not told what I was working on that day. And I was in Caitlin Glass, who's a great director, and has been working on this property for a long time, explained all of the things to me. Like, took 20 minutes to let me know what was happening. Like, oh, this all sounds very crazy. Good. I will try to be this child's asshole father. Great. This is going to work out real well.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. And that's interesting you mentioned about, of course, with Evangelion at that point, because I mean, I did interviews with Tiffany Grant and Spike Spencer, who of course played Shinji and Asuka in the original series, and of course came back into the reboot series. And it's how can I put exactly what they explained to me? When I spoke with Tiffany Grant last time, she described, I think, the creator for the Evangelion series as kind of like the Japanese George Lucas in a way, in terms of just building this incredible franchise that has lasted for a very long time, and said like, well, because we have the supposed fourth, the final movie, I guess. And I think she said along the lines, I have no idea what they're going to tell for this story and whether it's going to be really the last movie for this iteration of Evangelion. So.
Yeah, man, I don't know either. Like, I know that we're supposed to record on it. I know that it's coming. I believe it's finished. I don't know, and I don't know what I'm scared to speak publicly about it, because I don't, like, I should disclaim and say that I'm speaking out of ignorance. But my understanding is that he didn't quite get what the ending that he wanted. Like, they ran out of production money or whatever, like, out of not Neon Genesis, but one of the other runs of the show. And you should totally just edit this out. But I feel like this is supposed, like, he is, and it's like, man, I mean, it feels it feels like a little bit like, almost like Stanley Kubrick to me.
Mm.
There's something about this as he's gotten to the age that he is, he's not by any means old, but like in terms of like the arc of an artist's life and like what you want to create, it seems like it seems very Kubrickian,
Mm.
because there's just a lot of man, it's just like it's very heavy, like just like heavy imagery, heavy like motifs, and like the dialogue is for the most part between characters that are have carried the biggest emotional weight of the project
Mm.
in the story seem economic. The words are economic, and there's just a lot that's expressed in the imagery that's not expressed in words. And so I'm very curious to see where the fourth film lands.
Absolutely.
Um,
Absolutely, and that's definitely interesting about how you mentioned about, of course, with the creator, because Tiffany Grant, I think, said to me when they were going into the third movie for Evangelion, I think even like what's happening at the moment with the fourth movie, she kind of described it as going like, I think he's kind of like he's almost like running out of steam in terms of ideas, just going like, I just want this to end. I feel like I've told the story that I need to tell with this reboot, and I just want to move on to new properties now in some way. But I think in terms of story, where I would love to see Evangelion go is kind of similar to what's happening with the Star Wars movies, like them doing prequels, them doing backstories for characters that I feel like just didn't have enough tension in the original series, and going forward from that.
yeah,
That
yeah, I don't know, and yeah, I think you're spot on with your with your analysis. That seems right to me.
Fantastic, awesome. And anybody out there listening, if you're looking for ideas to write fanfics or scripts for stories, just take them out. Just take them straight out of my mouth. It's perfectly fine.
Pure
Now,
gold. Pure gold.
and so with across your acting career, where do you hope to see yourself with regards to like acting in the long run, especially post this pandemic?
Man, I think we're gonna make it out to the other side. Like things are gonna be okay. I think um, we're probably a year away, maybe from a vaccine, or something that is approvable vaccine. Maybe even a year and a half, and until then we'll be careful. I don't know what the world looks like because everything is most production is shut down with the exception of VO and voice acting. It's all I don't know, but I feel like in a post-vaccinated world where people I think will hopefully get this vaccine if they're not scared by conspiracy theories. We'll get the vaccine and or not. I don't know. It may just I don't know. It may just be like another because like not everybody in 1918. This is God. I'm rambling, but not everybody in 1918 got or me a vaccine for the Spanish flu or whatever, and people I don't know. People will die, and then you build antibodies or you don't. And some people will be selfish or cautious or careful or not, and will eventually sometime come out on the other side of this. I'm gonna take a pause here so you can edit this right out if you want to and start from here. I think I like to direct. I'd be interested in like I really love Dallas. Dallas feels like home to me. I like to have a family here. I got married back in October. My wife and I, in the midst of this crisis, have decided to buy a house because economically, believe it or not, the rates were so low and the prices dropped, and it was like this is our best chance to buy a house, so we bought a house. I think we're closing this Friday, so that's happening. And yeah, I'm interested in building a future here in Dallas. I'm interested in directing at Funimation. There's a lot of projects that are I don't know, man. The world and the market is changing. Like everything is like I have access to audition for a lot of projects in LA. That includes film and TV and voiceover and whatever. Like things are changing, and the market is becoming more open and flexible. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm guessing I'm going to keep doing what I'm doing maybe for another 20 years until I physically can't do it anymore. and then I don't know.
That's
I don't
absolutely
know. I'd
fantastic.
also do teaching. Directing isn't a thing.
Right, fantastic. Now, across your entire career, with all the roles that you've done, what would you say has been like the one role that resonates with you the most?
Oh man. Oh man. Maybe. Dude. I mean, this is a hard question. I mean, probably the role that's resonated with me the most is um, I played a I played a character in a show called was a stage play. Um, I don't know. Well, to make a brief answer, if people want to hear an anime answer before they hit stop and leave the podcast or the interview, then I would say that probably Benimaru Shinman from Fire Force is the closest of any. If I was going to be an anime character, if anyone was going to animate me into a world, that would be it. I would have a bad attitude. I would be have a bad attitude, a healthy disrespect for authority, and yeah, be an anti-hero. But apart from that, like the role that I've identified with most and that was most heartbreaking was probably in this show called The Nether, written by Jennifer Haley, which was a stage play, which I had a wonderful cast around me. Randy Perlman, who's done several voices for Funimation. Um, Also, Jade Saxton, who directs up at Funimation and is the voice of a bunch of different things. I think she's the voice of Carla in Fairy Tale. But yeah, man. I mean, I don't know. The Nether is a. What's weird, like, and this is the weird part, is that the guy that I played uh, was a pedophile that built a digital world in the future, and it's kind of like a mashup of like the Matrix or the Matrix and a couple other things, and maybe Minority Report. Um, but no spoiler alert, I guess. But yeah, man, he was a pedophile that didn't actually had never molested anyone. He just had feelings, and they built this virtual world to not touch kids, and the other players in this virtual world were all adults that were taking the forms of children, um, and then they would play in this world. And then I guess at the end of the day, I don't know. The question was asked like because he's built this thing. I don't know. Actually, strike all this from the interview
Yeah.
because I don't. I mean, that was the thing that like I guess the thing that changed me the most, or I guess that was the role that like helped broaden my perceptions of the world the most.
Mm.
And you don't necessarily have to edit. You can keep what you would have edited out, and then I will probably I will change your question like a bad interviewee. But it messed me up, man. Because like this guy, I know he's a bad dude. He has these urges to touch kids, and then he built this world to satisfy whatever was happening inside of him. But he's working like he's playing this game with other adults, which is very much like World of Warcraft. But yeah, and then I don't know, the ethical question of the play. I'm definitely not answering your question directly, but the ethical question of the play is that do the thoughts that we think matter, and
Mm.
do they have consequences if they don't actually hurt someone else physically? If someone is not immediately traumatized by this fantasy, does that hurt them? And man, it was. I mean, I don't know. And I walked away with some questions, and I walked away with some answers, but I don't like. it kind of met. It wasn't what I expected. The experience wasn't what I expected it to be. But it was also, man, it also, I guess, on the lowest, on the, maybe the, not the lowest common denominator, but a pretty decent common denominator level, it spoke to me about moral relativism and understand that I don't know. It helped me be more aware of how I was navigating through my life and what I was asking of other people, and like what was selfish and what wasn't, and are your needs, is a particular need selfish or not? Yeah, I don't know. That's a very we're in a dark time, and it's a very deep question to your very simple answer. That's where I'm at today, I think.
Right. Fantastic.
But yeah, man, it really kind of that show wrecked my brain. I mean, I feel better for it. I mean, I don't want to touch children for sure. But yeah, from exploring that character. But man, it definitely changed my lens on the world.
Right. Fantastic. Now, without going into any spoilers, what's next for Aaron Roberts for the fans to know about?
I don't know, man. I may be in this movie about a former president. I may. I've got another. There's another movie, the live action film that's like that. His opening was postponed. That was supposed to come out at the end of April, and I guess it's going to come out whenever we can be within, I don't know, any distance from each other. There's a movie called Frackers, which is coming out. Is what I'm speaking of. Yeah, I don't know. I've got a bunch of online events. I think there's a thing called Zobi that I'm doing, which is an online signing event, which is exciting. And I've got a couple other little digital live teleconferencing conventions with several places.
Fantastic.
Yeah.
Fantastic. And final question, what do you think that Uta would say if he was in Australia?
I'm not even sure. Like, here's my question to you: what is happening in Australia? You said that you're waiting for the clear to come out and live your lives again. But what is actually going on? Like, hold on, and I will answer your question. But when you go out to the stores? Are people covering their faces? What's happening over there?
I honestly have no idea.
So there's no best practices, or like, what is it? Do you feel like people are people disregarding like health guidelines? Are they following them?
I would assume so. I would assume so, but I haven't been out that much to really know what's going on with that, so I can't really answer that myself.
Okay, cool, very good. Then I think that Uta, before consuming one of his victims, would make him some delicious coffee and perhaps offer him an eyeball if he was a ghoul, and then ask him, "Do you have the Rona?"
Fantastic.
I don't know if the Rona has made it down to the down under. But we are definitely calling it the Rona up here.
That's absolutely fantastic. That's just wonderful. Aaron Roberts, thank you so much. It's been an absolute honor.
Awesome, man. Thanks you so much for that. Thank you for having me. This has been great.
Absolutely. And is there anything you would like to say to the fans out there in Australia and in the world?
Man, yeah. I mean, there's really not a better choice that you can make in your life apart from following me on Instagram at Aaron Roberts. Yes, and if you follow me there, then you'll know more about what's happening in my life than my own family. But yeah, I'm also on Twitter at Aaron Roberts S. If you want to follow my antics, and also, actually, you know what? If you want to look at my adorable dogs, which I have 2 Australian Shepherds who are super cute, and really the only reasons that you would want to follow me on social media at all, yeah, you should totally check them out.
Fantastic. That's absolutely wonderful. Well, guys, if you'd like to find out more about Aaron Roberts, you can check out the links which I'll put to in the description once this interview is finally up on YouTube. Don't forget to subscribe to Hannah Talk, follow me on both Facebook and Twitter, and don't forget to comment below and check out the links which I'll put to in the description below. Thank you all so much for listening. This is Simon and Aaron Roberts signing off. Bye for now.